Israel has uncovered the secret of the Iranian mountain. According to intelligence, Iran transferred centrifuges to Pickaxe Mountain, a deep underground facility where thousands of centrifuges for enriching uranium are being concealed. This is on the path towards producing an atomic bomb. The 10th day of bombing, Iran remains undeterred. This is despite the heavy damage to its infrastructure. And as the United States escalates its strikes in Iran, officials in Washington are debating whether to bring Israel into the campaign as well. President Donald Trump issued a new warning. The United States will strike again in southern Iran. And this is only the beginning. Alert levels in Israel are reaching their peak. The IDF is making it clear we are prepared to respond within hours. Officials in the Trump administration are reconsidering the possibility of advancing regime change in Tehran. Are we heading towards a full-scale war? Trump is considering taking off the gloves, and Israel is part of the picture. The Kuwaiti oil tanker was attacked along the unsafe American-Omani route. The war is expanding across the Middle East as Iran attacked American systems, and for the first time since 2009, the president of Lebanon and the United States are expected to meet at the White House. The Houthi rebels from Yemen have announced that they are blocking Saudi Arabia's maritime routes, risking the opening of a new front. And meanwhile, we are receiving a dramatic report. The United States is changing its strategy towards Iran, with Lebanon and Syria at the center. We will bring you all the details very shortly. I'm Yair Pinto, and currently Mati Shoshani is not with us because he's taking a short vacation. But don't worry, we have now Ashlea Alex with us today. And this is Boots on the Ground, bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel, as well as the full truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. Today is July 21st, so let's begin. The 10th consecutive day of American strikes in Iran demonstrates that Washington is no longer conducting a brief, punitive operation, but a war of attrition intended to change the strategic reality in the Persian Gulf. The United States Air Force and Navy struck a series of targets across Iran again overnight, while Tehran continues to present an image of steadfast resistance and refuses to give in to the military or the diplomatic pressure. So, according to a statement from the United States Central Command, CENTCOM, the strikes targeted military headquarters, missile and drone launch sites, air defensive systems, logistical bases, and naval capabilities used by Iran to threaten shippings in the Strait of Hormuz. Officials in Washington say that the goal is not only to destroy targets, but to systematically dismantle Iran's ability to continue and conducting a prolonged campaign against the United States and against its allies. And overnight, between Monday and Tuesday, the United States completed its 10th consecutive night of strikes in Iran, and the United States Central Command reported that dozens of targets had been attacked. But despite the declarations and the threats made by the United States President Donald Trump following the deaths of American soldiers, it appears that the strike and the operation is continuing in a format similar to that of recent days, without an exceptional escalation and without an attack on a new strategic target, including Pickaxe Mountain, where Trump has already threatened to strike the fortified nuclear site. And according to reports from the overnight, the Iranians transferred thousands of centrifuges to that same location. The United States military announced that American Air Force aircrafts and Navy ships struck command and control centers. Ballistic missile launch sites, drone systems, and air defensive batteries, and also Iranian naval capabilities during the night were struck. Footage released this morning by the United States military shows the precision munitions that are striking munitions and stockpile of missiles, drones, and additional military infrastructure. These are the same types of targets that were attacked in recent days as part of the American effort to wear down Tehran's military capabilities, primarily to ensure freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. However, 10 nights of intensive bombing have still not produced the political results that Washington is seeking, and Iran continues to apply pressure in the Strait of Hormuz, which is the world's most important shipping route for oil and gas supplies, and is making it clear that as long as its conditions are not met, calm will not return to the Gulf. Another attack against a tanker was reported during the past 24 hours, serving as a reminder that the maritime front has become one of the most dangerous centers of risk for the global energy economy. The White House emphasizes that the operation will continue as long as Iran continues to attack American forces, its allies, and the freedom of navigation. And President Donald Trump intensified his rhetoric and made it clear that any additional harm to an American soldier would be met with far greater force. That message is directed not only at Tehran, but also at the Revolutionary Guards, the Houthis in Yemen, and all of Iran's proxies across the Middle East. The President of the United States is expected to decide in the coming days whether to expand the military campaign against Iran and return to a full-scale fighting, according to officials that are familiar with these details, although no final decisions have been made on this issue. So, if the President orders such a move, the military campaign will be far more intense and extensive than the 10 nights of American airstrikes that were carried out so far, which focused primarily on targets around the Strait of Hormuz. The United States is preparing to reinforce its forces in the Middle East. The American administration is preparing for a new stage in the confrontation with Iran that is centered on shifting the focus to pressure away from direct attacks inside Iranian territory and towards reducing Tehran's regional influence. According to a source close to the White House who spoke to the Emirati website, Iranian News. According to the source, it said that this does not represent a reduction in the confrontation with Iran, but rather a change in the center of gravity of the American strategy. Washington views Iran's network of proxies and its system of regional influence as one of its primary sources of power. Therefore, officials are considering increasing pressure on supply routes, funding networks, and infrastructure that is associated with the Revolutionary Guards throughout the Middle East. Signs of possible shift in American strategy grew stronger following the end of the World Cup, after a period characterized by a relative decline in the intensity of the direct confrontation between Washington and Tehran. And according to the assessments cited in the report, the next phase may include a broader focus on Iran's allies in the region, alongside continued economic and diplomatic pressure on the regime itself. Today, on Tuesday, Iran attacked American radar and air defensive facilities in the Gulf and warned Washington of more decisive and powerful strikes. And at the same time, fears of the war expanding increased after the Houthis in Yemen threatened to impose a blockade on Saudi ports. The Revolutionary Guards announced that they had attacked and detained 2 oil tankers that failed to obey the instructions and attempted to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The attack is part of Iran's efforts to tighten its control over the vital maritime route amidst the renewed fighting. After the least 3 American soldiers were killed in recent days, the United States launched another wave of strikes in Iran late on Monday night. And according to Washington, the strikes were intended to continue degrading the Iranian military capabilities that are used to attack the commercial shippings inside the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, senior Israeli intelligence officials provided their American counterparts with information indicating that following the conclusion of Operation Rising Lion, centrifuges were transferred to the fortified bunker in the mountains. Israel revealed information about thousands of centrifuges that had been moved into tunnels near Natanz. So deep beneath the rocks of Mount Kolang, near the nuclear facilities at Natanz, lies what Israeli intelligence believes to be one of the keys to Iran's ability to rebuild its nuclear program. Thousands of centrifuges were transferred last autumn into tunnels carved into the mountain, and the compound could now be included in a much broader campaign if President Donald Trump orders the expansion of the strikes. The report that thousands of centrifuges were transferred to the underground site at Pickaxe Mountain is not simply another technical development. It is a painful reminder of the limitations of the military force against sites that cannot simply be destroyed from the air. The move indicates that Iran continues to learn, adapt, and adjust, placing Israel and the United States before a complex strategic equation that requires a fundamental change in the approach. And meanwhile, Iran continues on its path despite the 10th day of strikes, during which hundreds of targets have already been destroyed. Officials in Tehran claim that the country is engaged in a total war against the United States and that its forces continue to strike American targets and the targets of its allies throughout this region. Satellite images reveal impacts from the Iranian missiles at the American bases, strategic infrastructure belonging to the Gulf states, and locations in Jordan. And during the past 24 hours and overnight, air defense systems were once again activated in Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait following the Iranian missiles and the drone launches. Israel is closely monitoring the escalation between the United States and Iran. The concern is that Iran may fire at Israel and at our Air Force bases because of the presence of the American aircrafts. A senior IDF officer said that the defense establishment is on high alert. If we are attacked, we will defend ourselves. And look, the collapse of the Memorandum of Understanding signed in June between President Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is not merely a diplomatic failure. It signals Iran's return to its familiar strategy, applying pressure through its regional proxies while intensifying its military rhetoric and moving away from the diplomatic track. That is according to the senior diplomatic officials. So the latest statements from the senior Iranian regime officials, led by the Quds Force commander Ismail Qani and the Supreme Leader's military advisor, Mohsen Razai, convey a clear message. From Tehran's perspective, the era of war and negotiations at the same time has ended. If diplomacy resumes, it will take place under new rules and at a much higher price for Washington. The commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, Ismail Qani, announced yesterday that the commanders and the fighters of the resistant fronts would continue operating in accordance with the path led by the Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei. The Supreme Leader published a letter in which he wrote that Iran and the axis of resistance have unforgettable lessons for the United States of America. The collapse of the Memorandum of Understanding is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new stage in the confrontation between Iran and the United States. Tehran is once again relying on the axis of resistance and military threats to impose and improve its position, while Washington attempts to prevent it from turning regional pressure into a tool of strategic bargaining. The question is not whether the sides will ultimately return to the negotiating table, but under what conditions. Until then, the Middle East is expected to continue living under the shadow of a limited confrontation in which diplomacy does not disappear, but at least temporarily gives way to the language of force and deterrence. And in Lebanon, the Lebanese armed forces announced this morning that their troops have begun deploying in the village of Zutar el-Gabiyah in the Nabtiyah sector of southern Lebanon. This is following the withdrawal of IDF forces from the area. In its statement, the Lebanese armed forces called on residents not to return to the village yet, until the security situation will stabilize. The move is taking place as part of the initial implementation of the pilot regional agreement between Israel and Lebanon under the United States sponsorship. Last night, the IDF announced that it had begun a safe zone pilot program in southern Lebanon in cooperation with the United States Central Command and the Lebanese armed forces. The IDF stated that as part of the pilot, joint coordination and planning are taking place between the IDF and the United States military and the Lebanese armed forces regarding the continued implementation of the agreement. The IDF also emphasized that it would act forcefully against any violation of the agreement. The IDF confirms that under the instructions of the political leadership, the Safe Zone pilot program has begun with American coordination, with the goal of determining whether the Lebanese armed forces are actually capable of taking action against Hezbollah's illegal weapons. And the Houthis announced today that they are imposing a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. This is following reports from last week that claimed that Saudi Arabia attacked the airport in Sana'a. Last Tuesday, Arab media reported that Saudi Arabia had attacked Sana'a International Airport. According to the reports, the reason for the strikes was the landing of an Iranian aircraft in the country for the second time that week. In response, the Houthis issued a threat towards Riyadh and declared the ceasefire is over. The Yemeni Ministry of Defense issued a statement ordering the evacuation of the airport and urging civilians to stay away from the area. It was later reported that another Iranian aircraft had landed in the country, and amidst calls from the Houthis that are encouraging the Iranians to continue breaking the blockade. So, we have a great deal ahead of us. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto. Mati Shoshani is taking a short vacation, and we have today with me Ashlea Alex will be with us on Boots on the Ground. We will bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and about the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran and the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. So, just before we begin, I want to call on you to continue and spread the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts to see life through our eyes and what it's like to live in Israel during war. So, life here in Israel keeps us moving all the time. One day, we're hiking desert trails. The next, we're filming in remote locations, training, or exploring ancient biblical sites. It's the kind of lifestyle that demands mobility and also fast recovery. And that's why I've started using Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen Protein. It helps support the healthy joints, skin, and overall recovery. That's what you need in order to constantly move and have an active lifestyle. So Ancient Nutrition, the multi-collagen protein, combines multiple collagen sources into one easy-to-use formula, and it fits perfectly into my daily routine. So whether you're training, traveling, working long hours, or simply trying to support your health or your mobility and your active lifestyle, Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen Protein is a simple way for you to support your body and keep moving forward. So to try it for yourself, you can visit ancientnutrition.com, and then you can use the promo code Israel26 to save 26% on your next order. Again, that's Israel26 by going to ancientnutrition.com, and then you save 26% on your order. So you can support your health and support the mission of TBN Israel at the same time. Now let's get back to the news, because the 10th American strike did not introduce a new weapon or a single decisive target. It continued the deliberate campaign of attrition. American aircrafts and naval platforms struck command centers, ballistic missile launch sites, drone systems, air defensive batteries, weapon stockpiles, and naval capabilities that are connected to attacks on commercial shipping. The purpose is to damage the full attack chain. A missile unit needs targeting information, communications, fuel, transport vehicles, trained crews, protected storage, and also air defenses. When several parts are hit together, every new launch becomes harder to organize. Iran can still retain enough capability to respond, but it takes it longer. And the air defensive systems that were activated in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, also as missiles and one-way attack drones approached the American facilities. So Iran claimed that it struck the American radars and their missile systems, although several damage claims remain unverified. So basically, the Iranians are saying that they destroyed a lot more than what actually was verified so far. Satellite images appear to show impacts near hangars and areas used by American personnel at the Mafwaq Salti Air Base in Jordan and other places. And even a few successful penetrations can interrupt the flight operations and force valuable aircraft to relocate. Iran also released footage that it says shows an American MQ-9 being shot down near Bushehr. That claim still requires confirmation. The aircraft can remain airborne for roughly 27 hours and is valued at approximately $32 million. The Strait of Hormuz remains the center of confrontation. Another tanker was struck near Oman, forcing the new crew to abandon the vessel, and Iranian outlets described it as a Kuwaiti tanker using the American-Omani Southern Corridor with its automatic identification system switched off, and called it the third tanker hit within 24 hours. That sequence has not been independently confirmed yet. So turning off the ISIS aids the vessel's public transponder signal, and it does not remove the large tanker from the coastal radar, the satellite, the patrol aircraft, or visual observation. And Iran is using these indicators to argue that ships cannot depend on the American protection. Washington is trying to prove the opposite by striking coastal radar systems, missile drone, and other naval units of the Iranians. And after 10 nights, the United States can damage targets deep inside Iran, but Tehran can still disrupt the shipping and raise the economic cost of every transit. The nuclear file makes the next stage more dangerous. Israeli intelligence assesses that Iran transferred thousands of centrifuges into Pickaxe Mountain after the June 2025 war. The complex, also known as Mount Kolang, is located near Natanz, beneath approximately 90 to 140 meters of solid rock. Satellite surveillance has reportedly shown truck movements, reinforced tunnels, and a stronger security perimeter during the past 15 months. The centrifuges do not prove that enrichment has begun there. An enrichment cascade requires electricity, cooling, control, electronics, piping, vacuum equipment, and a stable supply of uranium gas. Iran may be storing the machines, installing the supporting systems, or preserving an option for later use. But international inspectors have not been allowed into the complex, so Washington and Jerusalem must plan around what the site could become. Its depth limits conventional air power. Missiles may destroy the tunnel entrances, ventilation, power, and surface infrastructure, but they may not destroy the underground holes themselves. So a ground operation could reach equipment that aircraft cannot. It will also require isolation of the area, air superiority, and troops capable of entering a defended tunnel complex. There's no public indication that such an operation has been ordered. Israel is preparing for a more immediate possibility. American refueling aircrafts and additional assets have moved towards Israel, where they may receive better protection than at the exposed Gulf bases or at Jordan. So Israeli officials are concerned that Iran could target Israeli Air Force installations because the American aircrafts are present. The IDF has raid readiness and says that it can respond within hours if Israel is attacked. The decision that could trigger that response is being debated in Washington. And for that part of the story, we now turn to Ashlea Alex. Over to you, Ashlea.
Thank you, Yair. President Trump is being presented with two strategies that lead in very different directions. The first is a 10-day ceasefire proposed through Qatar, Pakistan, Oman, and Egypt, and other mediators. The United States would halt its strikes, while Iran would reopen two shipping lanes through Hormuz. The southern lane in Omani waters would be protected from Iranian attacks. The northern lane, closer to Iran, would be released from American blockade. Neither Washington nor Tehran has accepted the proposal. The White House fears another temporary agreement could give Iran time to repair launch sites, restore communications, reposition missiles, and continue preparing protected nuclear facilities. Iran says its sovereignty over Hormuz cannot be negotiated away. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the United States remains open to diplomacy, but only if Iran is prepared to follow an agreement while ending missile and drone attacks. Another option is a return to full-scale warfare. American officials say that this campaign will be far more intensive and extensive than the strikes carried out during the past 10 nights. Targets near Tehran and nuclear facilities, which were largely avoided in this phase, could be added. CENTCOM is preparing options that may include more F-16 and F-35 fighters, supported by KC-135 aerial refueling aircraft. Tankers increasing range, time over target, and the number of aircraft available for each wave. Israel would likely join a significantly extended campaign, although no final decision has been announced. The administration is also reconsidering a political objective, weakening or removing the Iranian regime. Reported ideas include encouraging internal opposition and revisiting an Israeli proposal to support Kurdish groups hostile to Tehran. These are options under review, not approved operations. American intelligence is warning that bombing alone may not change Iran's position. The latest assessment describes a regime that has suffered significant damage but remains relatively stable. Analysts believe Iran could endure a maritime blockade for 3 to 4 months before economic pressure seriously threatens the government. That leaves Trump deciding whether to continue a campaign that may not change Tehran's calculations or expand it beyond its original purpose. The casualty figures add pressure. The Pentagon says nearly 100 American service members have suffered some degree of injury since July 7th. Most were minor concussions, and 96% have returned to duty. The wider conflict has killed 17 American service members. The Pentagon disputes accusations that it concealed casualty information, while Trump has promised Iran will pay many times over for every American life. Domestic politics also matters. A prolonged war raises fuel prices, consumes expensive interceptors, increases shipping costs, and exposes American personnel across the region. A ceasefire could lower those costs, but an agreement that leaves Hormuz contested and Pickaxe Mountain untouched could pause the fighting without resolving the threat. The same American strategy is now being tested in Lebanon. For the first time since 2009, the presidents of Lebanon and the United States are expected to meet at the White House. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun wants American support for the Lebanese armed forces, reconstruction assistance, and an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. Washington wants proof that the Lebanese state can become the country's only armed authority. The pilot program covers Froun, Srifa, and Zata al-Gabieh. Lebanese forces began deploying in Zata after the IDF repositioned its troops. Residents were told not to return immediately, while Lebanese units stabilized the area. American-led coordination will monitor whether illegal weapons, positions, and Hezbollah activity are removed. This is an operational test, not a ceremonial transfer. Israel retains the right to act against violations. Lebanon must show that its army can enter after an Israeli withdrawal and prevent Hezbollah from rebuilding it. President Aoun is also seeking support from Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. Donors are unlikely to fund reconstruction, while an Iranian-backed militia maintains an independent military system. The White House therefore sees Lebanon as part of the wider Iran strategy. Pressure is moving toward the routes, money, political protection, and infrastructure that allow the Revolutionary Guard's partners to survive. Yair, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ashlea. What you see on YouTube is only part of the story. you can get a closer first-hand report, behind-the-scene moments, and stories of faith, resilience, and hope straight from Israel by going to www.tbn.org/journeys/boots. Or you can text BOOTS to 316-316 for direct updates from TBN Israel. That's with Mati Shoshani and with me, Yair Pinto, coming to you from the ground here in Israel with everything that you need to know about what's happening. If you want to help us, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share this video, let friends know why it's important to support Israel. Also write it in the comments. Because what we're doing here is that we're bringing you the news from the ground so that you will know how to pray for the situation and for the peace of Jerusalem. This is a spiritual war, and we need your prayers. So the pressure on Iran's regional system is already moving beyond Lebanon. Syria once served as the land bridge connecting Iran, Iraq, and Hezbollah. The government of Ahmed al-Sharaa is now tightening its control along the borders with Iraq and Lebanon, closing illegal crossings and increasing pressure on smuggling tunnels. If that continues, Hezbollah will struggle to replace the missiles, the drones, the communication equipment, and the ammunition that was lost during the war. The Red Sea is becoming another front. The Houthis in Yemen announced an immediate maritime blockade against Saudi Arabia's under what they called an eye for an eye formula. They threatened Saudi vessels and ships that are sailing through Saudi ports. The Saudi-led coalition answered that it would respond firmly and had begun measures to protect the shippings through Bab el-Mandeb. This is the first major return to direct Houthi-Saudi confrontation since the informal truce that began in 2022. It allows accusations that Saudi Arabia struck Sana'a International Airport after another Iranian aircraft landed there. So Bab el-Mandeb is the southern entrance to the Red Sea. A full closure could affect roughly 7% of global oil supplies. Serious disruption there, while Hormuz remains contested, would pressure the energy exports and container traffic at both ends of the region. The Houthis may not possess the stockpiles required to enforce a complete blockade. Their threat still forces Saudi Arabia to deploy ships, aircrafts, radar, and air defensive systems, while insurers raise the operating costs. Iran does not need every proxy to win a separate war. It needs each front to absorb attention, weapons, aircrafts, and political energy, while Tehran improves its position for future negotiations. Washington is trying to reverse that leverage by damaging Iran's military capabilities, restricting the maritime operations, and weakening the corridors that sustain Hezbollah and the Houthis. The next decision will determine whether this remains a controlled campaign of attrition or becomes a coordinated attempt to break Iran's military and regional system if Washington opens the door to a wider war. So, which front will Tehran activate first? Let me know what you think about this in the comments. And in the meantime, help us spread the truth by clicking the subscribe button on TBN Israel YouTube channel. We are reporting multiple times every single day about what's happening in the war against Iran, in Israel, in the war against the terrorists in Lebanon or in the Gaza Strip. And we need your help. We need your help in prayer, and we need your help in sharing the truth. So the best thing that you can do in order to help us is to unite in prayer. I'm calling on all of you to take a few minutes in your daily prayer to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, to pray for the people of this land, to pray for your leaders, for wisdom, and God will answer. That's the best part about God. He always listens. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Let me show you. I think it's supposed to be behind me somewhere here. Coming to you. Maybe we passed it or not. But keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another update of Boots on the Ground.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.